Good afternoon and welcome to the Blocksport Podcast, where we will be talking to executives and authority figures from sports industry. My name is Samir Sarich. I'm your host, and today with me is Lucy Mills, founder of Ready, an innovation tech and Web3 agency, so designed and created to advance women's sport. Lucy, great to have you with us today. I have been following your journey for some time now. I have been highly impressed with it all, from professional footballer to an authority figure in Web3, AI, women's football, women's sport as a whole. But I'm sure our audience would love to hear more about your own background. What led to this kind of career choice today, before we delve into some of the topics we'll talk about. So please tell us more.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Samir. Really happy to be on this episode today. And my background, I've always worked in football. I'm 39 now. Half of my professional career is based working out of South Africa around the 2010 FIFA Men's World Cup, working on the FIFA Social Legacy Initiative. So I've been long involved in impact football and using football for social issues, social objectives, and also the latter half of my career based out of Denmark and now Spain. I've been in Spain, Barcelona for the past 5 years. Previously, I came to Spain because I got a job at FC Barcelona, working in the international programs department within the foundation. Running football, social impact programs, promoting physical activity and sport for young people around in different countries around the world. So long association in football, women's football as well. And I think my interest and curiosity about technology and blockchain was very much parallel to this. To my professional life and personal life in football, as a player, as an activist, as a professional. And then they started to intersect and intertwine a few years ago with this emergence of Web3 innovation in football. So I started studying what was happening with blockchain in football a few years ago. And Ready started because it was really, we recognized that a lot of the Web3 innovation at the time was focused on men's professional sport. There were not a lot of women in the space. So we started Ready initially as an educational initiative to get more women and people in women's sport ready for the future and learning about emerging technology. And that was really the origins. And I left FC Barcelona about a year and a half ago to go all in with Ready, still based in Barcelona, and we've obviously established ourselves today as a tech and innovation company, still doing a lot of education, but also consulting as well.
Amazing. So before we sort of jump into the, more about the Ready and its mission, let's start with Barcelona FC. You mentioned a few times Barcelona seems to be home and work and play for you in that sense. And, what did you sort of learn there kind of in more detail? How did that experience help sort of shape you and what you do today, bearing in mind that, it's one of the biggest sporting properties in the world, one of the biggest sporting and football clubs in the world, with a huge success and even bigger sort of ambition these days behind the women's football?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. And Barcelona stays with me. I was a fan of Barca from being a kid. I think I have a photo with an old shirt, like 20, 30 years ago. So yeah, it's a historic, iconic club. And so I always had a good feeling from the outside. And then when I started working in the club, I just had the best experience possible, I think, in the football environment. So the Barca style, the Barca values, the culture within the club was really tangible. The work that we were doing through the foundation department, which was very much valued by the club as a whole, A lot of investment financially, but also just support and different resources available from within the club towards the foundation, towards the social mission, really bringing to life and demonstrating that more than a club motto. It sounds cheesy, but the work that the foundation is doing is really, really impactful. And also because you're using the popularity of the brand, the magic, you're going into communities and places where, I mean, wherever you go around the world, Barca is iconic. People are football mad. So it's recognizing that and being able to harness that to promote different social issues, and whether it's health, education, physical activity, gender equality. So really, really magical experience, and actually very hard to leave. It wasn't an easy decision to decide to step away, but I think also ultimately at the same time I was doing a lot of ready activities, events, educational stuff on the side. I also had this sort of burning energy inside me that I felt like I needed to go forward. So everything, I'm so grateful for Barca, so grateful for the experience, for the Catalan experience, to understand, to be in an environment where people understand the magic and the power of football. And of course, the very same years that I was there was the growth trajectory of the women's team. So when in my first season at FC Barcelona, I remember the office was right opposite the mini stadium where the Barca B and the women's team used to play. They've knocked it down now. But I would literally be like, oh, the women's team are playing at 6 p.m. I would walk across the road. There was no security. There was no tickets. You just rock up with 50 other people and watch the game. So kind of like semi-professional in a non-professional league. 4 years later, 90,000+ people in Camp Nou. Many of the team forming the national team that won the World Cup. And just this changed attitude among Barca fans and the city towards women's football and the team. So that's also been incredible to watch and be part of.
Amazing. So in a way, you've kind of been part of the history making, in a way, of what's happened from the moment you arrived to the kind of moment you left, and what's happening now with the Spaniards obviously winning the World Cup. That's incredible. And I think I read somewhere that you're fluent or you're learning Catalan as well. You sort of really immersing yourself in the sort of local culture and the life there.
Yeah, Catalan is a beautiful language. I have been doing intensive lessons for a few years alongside my immersion in a very Catalan institution. And that's been one of the most special things actually about living in Barcelona, is the opportunity to learn about Catalan culture, to learn the language. Just to learn about the richness of the region. So yes, I have been struggling through and coming out the other end.
which I guess is hugely important, because I remember part of my studies were in Italy, in Bologna, and I really kind of immersed myself in the Italian Bolognese kind of culture, because I felt, the year of Erasmus program flies by, and you can easily just go back and not being able to sort of strike up a conversation. So I was very forceful, even with lots of my English friends, insisted we spoke Italian, because I wasn't going to miss the opportunity. So I think, we learn a great deal about the culture through the power of language, and it's great that you are following the same suit. Amazing. Let's jump to the next point I want to touch base with you. I recently read an article, what sports tech comprises of, from wearables and player development to sports broadcasting, performance analysis, data analytics and big data, sports med tech, VR and AR, fan engagement and fan experience. And I must admit, up until last quarter of 23, the notion of NFTs and fan tokens almost disappeared. And in numerous conversations of my own with club owners and senior management, you could just feel the sort of so much anger and resentment towards it. However, that seems to be changing now and shifting, perhaps as the educational part is starting to kick in. We often talk about the power of blockchain being the foundation technology. It's not crypto, it's not NFTs, it's not tokens, it's much more than that. I think both you and I do guest lecturing, and I often talk about the power of 3Ts: trust, transparency, and traceability. We've already spoken about. And frankly, life and business are all about these three pillars in any case. But you recently wrote a very interesting piece on fan tokens, which I really enjoyed on your LinkedIn profile. So I would love you to tell the audience your own views on and thoughts on fan tokens, what they should be used for, and how they should really be communicated to the fans.
So I've been, like many of us in this space, I've been following, or I've bought, or I've engaged with, I've studied fan tokens. I think they're an important contribution to the industry, an innovation, really, like something that's grappling with the very difficult issue of how do sports clubs today have bi-directional or kind of any kind of rich engagement with global audiences and worldwide fans. So from when they were introduced a number of years ago, for me it was like, oh wow, this is like super interesting. And then following that, obviously there was a lot of criticism, skepticism, backlash, and then it felt, kind of there were dips, and then people were putting them on a spotlight when things would go wrong, or values would crash and so on. So it kind of went through a bit of a difficult period. But still, I always thought, well, who else is figuring out this very difficult challenge? And actually, if you think more broadly about fandom is so subjective. Fandom is very, very, there's so many different ways to identify yourself as a fan, and often consumerism is a conduit to the practice of fandom, and we're buying things in the sports industry all the time, whether that's a ticket in the stadium or merchandise. There are different ways that we express as consumers or not, or otherwise as non-consumers, to be fans. And so fan tokens is another option. It's an opt-in, opt-out for whoever is interested or not. And so I came across an academic paper, which was the first peer-reviewed scientific study that did qualitative research with fans who are owners of fan tokens to get their opinion and perspective. And I feel like in this entire debate and criticism and backlash, it's like, where are the voices of the fans who are owning these tokens? And are we listening to them? Are we hearing what they're saying? And so it was so refreshing for me to come across a study that was actually putting the voices of fans first. And this study pointed to and described a lot of experiences and perspectives, but also rooted those experiences and perspectives into modern day cultural trends of fandom, of consumerism, of gamification, and so on. So it's a really interesting article. I shared my own views on it, and then got some really good engagement with other people, and I think it's just a reminder that the fan token, the mechanism, the infrastructure, the platform, the facility to be able to engage with the club, that's the infrastructure. But sports clubs that are engaging and offering fan tokens to fans, they need to be thinking about what do fans want, what kinds of things can we offer, what's valuable, how can we appreciate them, and how can we use these tokens in a dynamic, fun, valuable way. So I felt like it's also almost a challenge to sports organizations as well to remember their own role in offering value, as much as kind of centering everything on the fan token technology and saying, what are you offering fans? So yeah.
Very, very interesting, and I think you sort of brought up an important point here. You know, what do the fans think versus what the sports tech companies want. We all know what they want, and what the sort of clubs, leagues, federations also want, and they of course want the deeper fan engagement and new revenue streams. And I remember when I became the chairman of the football club some years ago, I always said it's important that we redefined the pyramid inside the sports industry, where fans go on the top, the club operators and owners in the middle, and the technology and the blockchain partners at the bottom as the sort of facilitators and enablers of these two important things. And it's very, very refreshing, as you said, that we are finally starting to listen to what fans say, because many of them have been burned, as we said, throughout all last year. And I think just over a year ago, FTX platform collapsed, and there was lots of involvement of FTX with the major sporting properties in the United States. The likes of Leo Caprio were also sort of implied in some capacity of being big supporters of it all. And I think recently we've seen with Binance and Ronaldo, of Binance settling a major lawsuit in the United States, 4.3 billion, that the Ronaldo seemed to be at the sort of firing line for promoting the sort of Binance digital tokens, NFTs, and so misleading his own fans. So I think it's important that this educational piece keeps on being driven to everyone, all the stakeholders in the industry. And I often say that that it's a journey. It's not a destination. I think we've got a lot of work to do. And I was recently sort of reading, just to top it up, on the English dictionary of a definition of sports technologies, that it refers to the use of technology to improve athlete and athletic performance, training, analysis, and overall sports experience. And we're talking about this sports experience, I think, where the sort of fandom and fan engagement comes in, whereas the industry sort of definition of sports tech is, it's not just about gadgets and gizmos, but rather a vast and ever expanding industry that encompasses a lot of categories. And we talked about at the start of the episode, what it falls into. So that just leads us nicely into your sort of recently launched course, AI in Sport, which I'd love you to tell us more about, how it came about, what the course offers to its students, what the plan behind it when it comes down to the educational side of the equation, bearing in mind how important education is in the sports industry, especially on the tech front. I think AI and ML, artificial intelligence and machine learning, have been the buzzwords for a long time now, initially in the non-sport related industries, now within sports. And I see a great deal, the likes of UEFA, FIFA, FIBA, everyone's talking about, everyone's doing a project on it. I think I recently read even Euro 24 fan zones are pushing the AI and engagement side of the equation. So, I'd love us to hear a little bit more about your sort of course on that front.
Yeah, great. And Samir, we definitely share a love of education, of creating those spaces where people can learn in a non-judgmental way. At Ready, we often do we do courses, but we do trainings and workshops, events, and we often do these with women's sports groups, with grassroots sports organizations, NGOs as well. So organizations that are often left out, or they're under resourced, or they're quite far from thinking about their digital processes or their tech capabilities, and then what's this Web3, and now what's this AI, and so we've been doing a lot of education in the Web3 space with lots of different types of sports organizations and groups. And one of the recurring questions, and of course AI is a big buzzword, it's everywhere, the past year or so, and one of the repeated things was like, oh, what now? And what are you guys going to do? Are you going to offer something, and are you going to this and that? So we have one of our ready young talent who's actually a computer science AI candidate at Duke University, Masters. We spoke with her this last summer, and she actually did an internship over the summer with IBM on the AI powered in tennis over summer. So we've all been learning from her, from other industry experts. And so we thought, okay, yeah, let's create that learning space around what's happening with AI in sport. Let's demystify, what is AI? Where does it come from? What are the different types of AI? How we're seeing AI actually in very daily life that we probably don't even realize. And then how let's investigate, let's research, let's put together some content on how we're seeing AI in sport. And with so we put together this course, and we recently launched it. We've had a lot of really good interest, and from that basis and the content, so we feature experts. So the Chief Product Officer and founder of Areto Labs, based in New Zealand, Jacqueline Comer, they use an AI system to identify and eliminate online abuse for sports clubs, so promoting better online communities. We also have Nancy Hensley, who's a founding member of Mercury 13. She was a former IBM Stats Perform executive, has been an AI expert for decades before it was cool and buzzy. So she's features on there, and Kalia, who I mentioned, Kalia Hogg, who's in the US. And so yeah, the course has these experts, and from there we've been doing workshops and trainings and more bespoke educational stuff where we bring people together. There's no silly question, and yeah, it's been very popular with women's sports groups. And I think it shows us two things. One, that, for example, just yesterday I did a webinar for the Women's Sport Collective, and there were 325 registrations for this webinar. 325 women in sport interested in learning about AI, which is phenomenal. And so we were reflecting, saying there's a great demand for women in the industry who want to be in a kind of space where they learn about this stuff in a very relaxed and informal way. And secondly, things like AI has a lot of potential for women's sport in particular, because it's generally underinvested in. You have one person doing 5 people's jobs. There's a great data gap. There's a lot of biases in historical data that is used in these systems. So there are a lot of efforts that the women's sports community can be doing to improve the technology, and also the technology can support, offer assistance, tools to try to help with data analysis and other functions, prevention of injury, positive online community. So there are different areas that we really think that AI as simple and low cost tools can really help women's sport.
And that's amazing. In a similar vein, how blockchain as a technology has found its application in every single industry. I think lots of people just think of fintech as the blockchain, so technology, but it's literally in everything from government to security to, as you just mentioned, transport, supply chain, you name it. But another interesting thing you mentioned, which reminded me of my sort of recent visit to Oxford University Computer Science Department. So I was lucky to have private dinner with Sir Tim Berners-Lee, who invented World Wide Web. So now you can imagine Sir Tim all these decades ago was a total pioneer and innovator when it came down to sort of www at the time. And I remember we had a few hours together and we talked about AI and ML, and he said, look, Samir, this is just at its infancy. There's so much more. that we are yet to see in the environment. And then also speaking to some of the professors, and they said, look, we've been working on AI for the last 3 decades, but until Elon Musk said a few years ago that AI will destroy the humanity, he said we were happy working. Nobody cared about us. Since then, the BBC has been on the phone. The ITV wants to interview us. The government is now bringing us in to work on the policy. So, as you mentioned, AI all of a sudden became cool, and obviously everyone's now talking about machine learning, ML as a service. And I spoke to some of the ML experts who also have been in space for 2 or 3 decades, and they said that the big issue with ML is the lack of resources, trained resources, educated resources, because in the next 5 to 10 years, most companies, including the sporting properties, will move towards ML because they will do some amazing things in tandem with AI. So I feel, as a mathematician and now a PhD candidate of blockchain, I'm a big believer that we are onto something here that, if deployed in the right way, will really improve the society, the fairness, the justice, everything that I guess if you are, a decent human being, you want to see, more of the justice around the world across the board, less sort of so issues that, as you just mentioned, the abuse online, which lots of sportsmen and women are really struggling with in terms of the bad of the social media. So I'm a sort of positive realist in that sense. But that brings me to the next question, Lucy, that I was kind of touched on. I recently read something very profound you wrote. I think it was on your website, where you said, I believe in the sport's potential for good, for physical and emotional well-being, for equality and inclusion, for holistic talent development. It's something I work to further, whether as a player, volunteer, coach, educator, project manager, researcher, consultant, founder, and a mentor. How much of that ambition that you have put down has been materialized to date, and what is next for Lucy Mills and Ready?
So I've always believed that this is where I really love the kind of design thinking, human-centered design type philosophy of designing football or sport and football in ways. I mean, it has to be intentionally curated, and I think that resonates with pretty much everything we do. So we recognize that there are inequalities in society. We recognize that different people, because of different identity characteristics, are discriminated against or have better access or worse access. And so everything we do, we have to be intentional about. And so the phrase that you so kindly mentioned there is really my belief that of being intentional, of like when we're running sessions, educational sessions, we're aware of who's in the room and where they're coming from and what kind of backgrounds. Or if it's in the football field, creating those spaces so that everybody is enjoying, included, participating, getting the best benefits. So whether that's been me in a tracksuit running sessions or me as an educator in a classroom, that's kind of what I always try to be purposeful about and think about. And I think with Ready as well, we live and breathe that at Ready, because we have a very intentional focus on making sure that people feel empowered with up-to-date knowledge that's not going to cost them an MBA or an expensive degree, but it's hearing from experts, it's getting up-to-date knowledge, it's making that decision as to if it's relevant in their own lives or their own sports, having that network to then figure out if how they want to take that forward. But yeah, I think doing that with positivity, with optimism, with a smile is like kind of part of our culture and ethos. And so I think that's really what that phrase on my website, on my personal website, speaks to.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And perhaps we can finish up with your own views on women's football or women's sport as a whole, especially in that sort of digital realm we both seem to be very, very passionate and excited about.
Yes, so many people say to me, what will it take for women's sport to X, Y, and Z, or what's next, and so on. And I really just think now it's just time, because the trajectory, the data, the types of pioneers and leaders and thinkers in women's sport, the fan bases, the foundations are there. It's incredibly exciting. People question, oh well, the tickets are cheap. Oh well, there's no, the investment's small. I think it's just time. You're talking about very short time scales of professionalization and exposure and so on. So I'm optimistic, and I try to do my own bit, whether that's supporting a startup in the women's sports space, or by being a subscriber or a member or whatever. I think we can all do small things ourselves, but and also just give a little bit of slack and say, like, the men's sport has had decades, if not centuries, to get to a place of such influence and prominence. And I think women's sport is rapidly catching up.
So yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that the sort of word that resonates with me there is patience. I think people seem to be impatient in general, and they want things to happen overnight. But both you and I know that Rome wasn't built overnight. It takes time. And I remember attending, I think last year, a panel with Rick Parry, and as you know, he founded and started the Premier League in the early 90s. And the conversation was about the parallels between men's and women's football. And he rightly said, look, don't try to copy what we did then. Of course, I did a major sort of TV deal, which, as a sort of media rights side of the equation, changed the game and enabled the clubs to be more solvent. I think the women's football is going in a different direction, as you rightly pointed out. Men's football has had decades. And if we think about men's football 20 or 30 years ago, it's not what it is today. And if we think about it in 10 years from now, it's definitely not going to be what it is today. So I think there are some interesting parallels, but at the same time, I think women's football has got its own trajectory, its own journey, and the life of its own. So I think it's good. It's good to sort of drive their message of patience and the sort of planning, I guess, very important. So, Lucy, how can others interested in your advice, opinion, expertise, consultancy, kind of what's the easiest way to contact you?
Yeah, great. So I am active on LinkedIn, Lucy Mills. My company's name is called Ready Sport Global. So it's readysportglobal.com. We have there our courses, Web3, AI. We have the Ready Read newsletter, which is a monthly roundup on Web3 and women's sport. I think those are the best ways.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Lucy. It's been a real pleasure to have you on the Blocksport own podcast. Highly inspiring, insightful, energizing as always. The best of luck with it all, and see you very, very soon.
Thank you very much.